People in China disappear every day, but police aren't looking for them because they've been taken by the Chinese Communist Party. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Shelley Zhang, filling in for Chris Chappell. China is often compared to George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. In the book, an oppressive Big Brother government tightly controls every aspect of society. Anyone who steps a toe out of line is taken to the Ministry of Love, which is as much about love as Burger King's Impossible Whopper is about meat. Once there, people are imprisoned and tortured until they learn to obey the party, heart, mind, and soul. And if they don't, well, the party can do without them. China has a similar method for keeping people in line. It's like someone at a Barnes & Noble accidentally placed 1984 in the How to Govern section, and the CCP just ran with it. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party has disappeared people it considers a threat, like in 1995 when the 6-year-old Panchen Lama was disappeared by the state. You can tell how tough the CCP is because they considered a 6-year-old a threat. Who are they going to disappear next? This sleepy kitty? Watch out, he's a menace. Actually, in the case of the Panchen Lama, the party was playing the long game, because the Panchen Lama picks the next Dalai Lama. So the party just disappeared one 6-year-old and picked their own Panchen Lama instead. A Panchen Lama who will resolutely endorse Comrade Xi Jinping as the core of the Communist Party, endorse socialism with Chinese characteristics, and continue the glorious tradition of loving the country. Yeah, that seems legit. What happened to the original Panchen Lama? According to the Chinese Communist Party, he went to college and has a stable job. And boy, does he love living on that farm upstate. The point is, the CCP is good at disappearing people, including their own. For years, the party had an internal disciplinary system called Shuanggui that used interrogation mixed with torture to get Communist Party officials to confess to alleged crimes. Now, I'm sure that a lot of the party members who were Shuanggui'd were actually corrupt, but it's impossible to know because Shuanggui was also corrupt.
There's a table in front of me, and he smashed the table like that, and I was like, I never have that treatment in my life. And I tell him about the law, and he say, we don't care about the law. Here is out of law.
Human Rights Watch said Shuanggui detainees were deprived of sleep, food, and water for long periods of time, forced into stress positions, severely beaten, and put into solitary confinement. And surprise, surprise, they were also often cut off from family members or a lawyer. But at least they didn't unleash this sleepy kitty on them. He's the real threat. Now, Shuanggui just targeted party members, but that doesn't mean regular Chinese citizens weren't subjected to the same kind of disappearances, torture, and interrogation. I'll talk about that a little later. But as you can imagine, the pattern of enforced disappearances brought the party some bad publicity, which is why in 2018 they decided to clean up their act by passing a law that made Shuanggui look tame by comparison. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. The Chinese Communist Party disappeared and tortured Communist Party members under the Shuanggui system for years. But in 2018, it decided to change its ways by passing the Big Brother supervision law. Okay, it's not really called that, but the fact you didn't know I was joking shows how Barnes & Noble really needs to take its book placement more seriously. It's actually called the Supervision Law, and it does give the Communist Party an awful lot of power. One of the things it created was a replacement to Shuanggui called Liuzhi, which means retention in custody. It was supposed to be a kinder, gentler system than Shuanggui, one that treated suspects well. In its effort to give Liuzhi a veneer of legality that Shuanggui lacked, authorities said interrogations will be videotaped and families notified within 24 hours, among other reforms. Because the CCP cares about transparency, about as much as cats care about not knocking things off your counter. But less than a month after it was established, a 45-year-old man reportedly died after 26 days in Liuzhi, his body covered in bruises. I'm sure that was just an accident, though. I mean, who doesn't get a little bruised when answering questions? He must have been thinking really hard. And I'm sure there was a good reason the local commission didn't want to hand over footage of his interrogation either. There always is. Last year, the U.S. State Department Human Rights Report described conditions under Liuzhi as being almost the same as those under Shuanggui: solitary confinement, sleep deprivation, beatings, and being forced to stay in stress positions. Despite promises of reform, the report said Liuzhi detainees are still held incommunicado and have no recourse to appeal their detention. This is like parents complaining about their kids getting hurt playing dodgeball, so the school replaces it with a totally different game called Don't Get Hit Ball. Liuzhi is administered under the Communist Party's National Supervision Commission, an internal party watchdog that operates outside the normal legal system. Under Liuzhi, suspects could now be legally kidnapped, interrogated, and held for as long as 6 months. All before a person was officially charged with the crime. The goal was to get a confession, which I'm sure wasn't hard after a few days of torture. Not necessarily a true confession, but hey, whoever said this was about justice. And after a few days of torture, people will admit to anything. I'm surprised they didn't trot out a single prisoner and announce, according to his confession, that they caught Jack the Ripper / the Zodiac Killer / Banksy. Once the victim had confessed, they were sometimes handed over to the judicial system to face official charges. And instead of just policing the party's 88 million members like Shuanggui did, Liuzhi could punish any public servant or Chinese Communist Party member who allegedly violates duties or commits economic crimes, potentially reaching nearly 300 million victims. Basically, anyone working for or loosely related to state-owned enterprises or public institutions like hospitals and schools could also be targeted. And people think working in healthcare or education in America is torture. So that man I mentioned earlier who died while in Liuzhi, he was a driver for a local official suspected of corruption. He wasn't even suspected of corruption himself when he was taken in. Which just goes to show that this isn't about corruption. This is about making sure everyone is terrified of getting into trouble with the Communist Party. It makes people constantly afraid they could be abducted at any moment, regardless of their innocence, and made to disappear, possibly forever. As you can imagine, China isn't publishing data on how many people have been taken under Liuzhi. Human rights NGO Safeguard Defenders estimated last year that a minimum average of 16 to 76 people are put into the NSC's Liuzhi detention system every single day. And there have been some pretty high-profile people snagged by it since it was rolled out in 2018. China's most famous actress, Fan Bingbing, disappeared in September 2018. When she resurfaced, she apologized for tax evasion, for which she was charged $131 million. That would be like if Katie Holmes went missing for 6 months, then all of a sudden resurfaced and said she was wrong, Tom Cruise and Scientology are great. Definitely not suspicious at all. Former head of Interpol Meng Hongwei was also taken into Liuzhi custody in 2018. He was sentenced 2 years later to 13 years in prison for bribery. Now, there could have been more high-profile cases like these, but it's sometimes hard to tell them apart from China's other secret detention system, residential surveillance at a designated location, or RSDL. This system is sometimes called China's black jails. It's pretty much like Liuzhi, but instead of targeting party members and public servants, it targets, well, everyone else who gets in trouble with the CCP. People like human rights lawyers, journalists, and religious people. So if you were thinking, oh man, I want to be disappeared and tortured, but I'm not a CCP member, you're in luck. And a sadomasochist. Canadians Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig were initially detained under RSDL. As was Chinese-Swedish bookseller Gui Minhai. He was kidnapped in Thailand and brought back to China to face a 10-year prison sentence. While he was sentenced for providing intelligence overseas, his real crime was selling books in Hong Kong that were critical of the Chinese Communist Party. So between Liuzhi and RSDL, pretty much anyone in China can be disappeared at any moment, and it's all perfectly legal under Chinese laws. Because if there's one thing the Communist Party is good at, it's making sure everyone is treated equally badly. Apparently, while reading 1984, the main thing the CCP thought was, this government isn't going far enough. Challenge accepted. And remember, China Uncensored is able to keep making episodes like this because of viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/China Uncensored to contribute on the crowdfunding website Patreon, or go to chinauncensored.locals.com to join us on the exclusive social media site Locals. We rely on your support to keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Shelley Zhang. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.